Hello?
Why don't you want to talk to me?
Who is this?
What's that noise?
Popcorn.
You making popcorn?
Uh-huh.
I only eat popcorn at the movies.
Well, I'm getting ready to watch a video.
Really? What?
Oh, just some scary movie.
You like scary movies?
Uh-huh.
What's your favorite scary movie?
I thought it was funny that Drew Barrymore was just entertaining this creep weirdo. Oh, wrong number, sorry. And then she's like, ooh, you sound cute. Like, ooh, I don't know you. It's like, if someone called me, I'd be like, no, bye. Wrong number.
She's like flirting with him for a while.
We can't stop now.
Stop, leave us alone!
Then answer the question.
Do you like scary movies? What's your favorite?
That's when I was like, Drew Barrymore's not going to be in this movie very long. She is dead.
Yeah, baby. We are in the thick of spooky season. Scary movies. Let's go. That was intro music by Electro Swing Thing. Shout out Wolfgang. All those artists over there, they're pumping out some spooky, bouncy, rompy, ghoulish hits. I love it. They're really juicing up our podcast over here.
The one thing I don't have enough in my music is the ghoulishness. And so being able to get that and add that as part of the intro to our show really just fills me with that spooky feeling.
It's just like it's like Bonda music meets ghoulish shenanigans. It's that haunted house theme that I'm missing in my life, and I love it. So check out Electro Swing Thing. They're located at electroswingthing.com. Today we're watching a classic, and it's popping off because I'm Captain Pop. I'm James Gordon. I'm one of the hosts of this fine show that you have chose to listen to. And across the table from me is none other than the corn dog himself, Mr.
Nick Justice. Here we are, bud. Yeah, I'm pumped to be here, man. And this movie, I'm excited to go over because this is really like your quintessential spooky season film.
Woo! What a ride.
I can't say you could have a spooky season without this movie, so I'm glad we're doing it.
I mean, we're going back to 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 back spooky movies, scary movies. Today, we're reviewing the classic from the 90s, Scream from 1996.
We are. I think you'd probably classify this as the gold standard for quote unquote slasher films.
Quintessential slasher for sure.
This is actually surprisingly something I've never watched.
Me too.
While I'm aware of it, everybody knows the Ghostface mask. I mean, who doesn't know about that? So this is my first time actually watching it through, so I feel like I get a nice, fresh set of eyes on this movie. So this movie, directed by Wes Craven. Sorry,
I was gonna say it's directed by Wes Craven, but on the notes you shorten it to Wes Crave. My boy Wes Crave. This is a Wes Crave joint.
It was, yeah, Wes Craven, who also famously did Nightmare on Elm Street. So very much in that horror genre. Likes that.
Oh, dude, this guy, he's like the master of horror because he directed The Hills Have Eyes from 1977, Hills Have Eyes 2, Swamp Thing from 1982, like you said, A Nightmare on Elm Street, a couple episodes of The Twilight Zone. This is definitely a Wes Crave production.
Very Craven-y today.
I'm craving that Wes.
Yeah, like we said, this is right up your alley of that classic horror film because we have the classic horror director. This movie stars Neve Campbell, Courtney Cox, David Arquette, and Skeet Ulrich.
I like how you added Skeet Ulrich in there just because his name was Skeet.
Dude, I couldn't not. As well as a huge other cast of characters that we're gonna highlight as we go through this. There's a lot of recognizable faces going on.
Skeet. Skeet. Oh, Rich. Yeah.
Well, if he hasn't heard that, I think he has a new ringtone. This movie comes in with an estimated budget of $14 million and the worldwide box office of about $173 million. So this is big time.
Oh yeah, huge return. So we're talking.
That's 13x.
1,200% return.
Yeah.
Take away the budget. But that's one of our highest ones so far this season. The only one that comes close is Batman.
Yeah, this is massive.
Batman had a $35 million budget, and raked in $411 million. So that's a 1,100% return. This is by far the biggest return. And just for a little perspective, Big Fat Liar had a similar budget of $15 million, but only brought in $52 million. So 353% return there. This one's up in the thousands. So I think you're going to make some sequels
for the next 30 years. You have to guess that the star power had a lot to do with this. I mean, Courtney Cox's and David Arquette's, and I mean, Wes Craven's name is on it.
Yeah, I was going to say the director's name attached to it for sure.
So all of it together, just no pun intended, screams, you need to go see this movie.
Yeah, I was really excited to. I threw this on the list because I've never seen it, and it's a classic movie that has been referenced to, parodied. Scary Movie, the original, famously parodies this movie. And when I was watching the movie, I saw that Dimension Films showed up, and I thought, I'm recalling Dimension Films also appearing on the front end of Scary Movie. And it's in fact true. Scary Movie and Scream were made by the same production company. So I think that's why they had full authority to just rip on it. Yeah.
What's interesting is that I was going to ask this at the end, but the mask, right? The ghost face mask is so tied to Scream, but that's not like a copyrighted mask. Like, I think it's just a general mask that they use in the movie. I mean, you see it every Halloween. Any store will sell it. Do you know if that's like a trademarked mask by Scream?
I'm looking this up right now. Here's an article from slashfilm.com. Very on brand.
Perfect.
The headline is, "The origin of the Ghostface mask in Scream is delightfully mundane. Ghostface was a cheap Halloween costume mask. It's been relatively common knowledge for a while that the Ghostface mask was meant to emulate Edvard Munch's painting, The Scream. However, what many may not realize is that the mask was not created for Scream. It was an existing costume mask sold by a company called Fun World and designed by a woman named Bridget Slyerton. Scream screenwriter Kevin Williamson had this to say about finding the mask. No one could agree on a mask, and I remember we were in a location scout and we found Ghostface in a box of stuff in a garage. Wes Craven immediately looked at it and said, 'This is like the famous Scream painting.' And so we took that to our production and we said, 'Riff on this, make something of this.' They must have done 20 different designs. Every one of them was rejected by the studio. And finally, we were like, why don't we just get the rights to this mask?' So there's your answer.
Huh.
I had that same question. So thank you for bringing that up.
I wonder if that's why it's called Scream, because it's after the Scream painting. Whoa, we just unlock a secret? Just play it, just confirmed it.
JCI, bitch.
There's a lot of stuff to get into this, a lot of stuff to get into for this movie. So what do you say we hit this log line and dive into some plot talk?
I would love that. Two virgins, not virgins for sex, but Scream virgins, watching Scream, reviewing it. Hit me with that magical log line.
A year after the murder of her mother, a teenage girl is terrorized by a masked killer who targets her and her friends by using scary movies as part of a deadly game. Okay, can I just say at the top of this,
Yeah.
I've seen this opening probably a couple times, but I don't know why I never carried on to watch the rest of the movie. I don't know if I was young and scared, but this opening it's really well done. This is a great opening to a movie.
Yeah, it starts off like a psych thriller. Like, it's really good. So we're in the small town of Woodsboro, California, and we open up on high school student. I love this in the 90s, high school students that clearly...
30-somethings.
Yeah. But we're with Casey Becker, who was played by, was it Drew Barrymore?
Correct.
And at this point, I'm like, oh, Drew Barrymore's going to be a big part of this movie. She wasn't in the starring roles. We'll find out why here in a second. So she's home alone and she receives a phone call from an unknown person. And they end up like chatting on the phone. It's like this muffled voice through like a voice modulator.
You like scary movies?
Uh-huh.
What's your favorite scary movie?
I don't know.
You never told me your name.
Why do you want to know my name?
I want to know who I'm looking at.
And he eventually tells her, like, don't hang up, bitch. And you're like, whoa, this got really aggressive really fast. and he starts threatening her, and he wants to discuss horror movies. You got to answer the Trolls Riddles 3 if you want to live.
You gotta pay the troll toll.
But at this point in the movie, I'm saying, okay, this is a kind of a self-aware movie. You're referencing other horror films in this universe. These people like horror movies. Like, all the horror tropes are already baked into this movie.
This is the tip of the iceberg for being meta.
Yeah.
It's just mentioning scary movies as we're watching a scary movies. It doesn't get super self-aware in this moment, but it definitely does later on. And as this movie progresses.
I'm Wes Craven. I've done them all. So let's talk about them.
Yo, it's Wes Crave.
It's the Crave. At one point, she's like, my boyfriend plays football. He's going to kick your ass kind of thing. And he goes, turn on the lights in the patio. Boyfriend is tied up. And he is in a bad way. He is bloodied and beaten. He goes, you need to answer a question to save his life.
Here's how we play. I ask a question. If you get it right, Steve lives.
Please don't do that.
Come on, it'll be fun.
Please.
It's an easy category.
Please.
Movie trivia.
But she gives the incorrect answer as a question about like Friday the 13th, and Steve dies.
But poor Steve, I'm afraid he's out.
Super mutilated. Just like the lights shut off, and then all of a sudden, 5 seconds later, Steve's guts are all over his lap.
Yeah, it's just he got gutted bad. It's also funny having not watched this movie all the way through, but having seen the scary movies a lot.
I was going to say scary movie
And-
and that one episode of Boy Meets World where they do make a
Yes.
reference to Scream.
Yeah, so it's fun going back and watching it and then like kind of tying in, oh, that's where that's where the parody comes from. Casey tries to leave the house. I don't know why you leave like the confined areas of your house.
Ghostface yeeted a chair through the window, so he had a way
Oh,
in.
that's right.
This guy's hella strong. Or girl. We don't know.
Ghostface does get her and drags her away. Her parents come home and they walk right by her. Like as she's like trying to crawl and she's all like gutted and whatnot. And they're like, oh my God, where is she?
They got big property. They can't see to their left 50 feet down their 100-foot porch.
Yeah. They're like, where is she? Where do we look? And it's like the trail of blood. Go look at the trail of blood. They do find her her disemboweled corpse hanging from a tree.
Again, Ghostface is fast acting to acting over here. He's like, or she, it is like on it.
Yeah, and that's when I was like, Drew Barrymore's not going to be in this movie very long. She is dead.
She's super dead.
So that was our introduction to Ghostface.
Yeah, I want to say that this opening scene is actually the first 13 minutes of this scene. So we're with Drew Barrymore for quite a while in a drawn-out single location scene.
Great suspense. A lot of suspense.
Great suspense. You're thinking she's going to be in it, but she's hella not. Great opening. Definitely like a blueprint for future horror movies to emulate.
Yeah, I wonder if that was a way for like Wes Craven coming out saying, hey, I'll put a star here and I'll show you her on screen and I'll murder her. Like no one's safe. Because you know, in a horror, in any movie really, when your star actor's in trouble, like you could be like, oh, it's suspense, but at the same time, you're always thinking in the back of your mind, this is the lead actor, they're getting out of here, right? Like they're not dying. And Wes Craven's like, nah, no one's safe.
He's like setting the bar, like, yeah, anybody can bite the dust or the knife at this point.
I think that's a great way to set up your horror film.
When Steve is hella dead, that's when you hang up with the killer and you just dial 911. I mean, he does say that they won't come in time, which I kind of believe because she gets murdered within 6 minutes and they're like on some isolated property with like a cornfield. They're like out there. So I guess I believe it.
More corn.
Hella corn. But still, you got just dial 911.
Yeah, I mean, at that point when you kind of realize that you're dead, right? She kind of you got to like realize your fate and be like, what are my best options here?
Like you said, you should call 911, run to like a secure room that doesn't have any like upstairs, like you can't climb up there from the outside, lock the door, barricade the door, and just wait for the cops.
Grab a knife and hope for the best.
But no, we're dead. We smash cut to Nev Campbell in her bedroom. So this is another high school student. I do have the ages here. She is 23 when she made this movie. Drew Barrymore was actually only 21.
Okay, so a little closer to high school. I mean,
Yeah,
still.
a huge violation of the undershooting the age casting. So Neve Campbell, she's a teen. She is on the super 90s computer. Her boyfriend, Billy, shows up and he just crawls through the window. Remember in the 90s when your significant other would just crawl through the window?
Yeah, climb up, throw a rock at the window. Hey, I'm down here.
But Billy doesn't throw rocks. He just climbs up and
He just pops
waltzes
in.
on it. Yeah.
All of a sudden, you're like, okay, you kind of get around a house pretty quick. You're a little nimble. Like I'm off the bat in these kind of movies. Like, all right, I'm gonna find the killer.
This is gonna be fun because we'll treat it like we don't know to the audience. But did you have guesses? And at what points of the movie did you guess if it was somebody? Just let me know when we get there.
Yeah, I'll let you know.
Let me know because I was trying to figure it out too. I was like, I'm gonna get this killer.
But yeah, they have a relationship. We find out they have not gone all the way yet.
Basically, Billy wants to bang Sydney.
And she's like, no. And we find out that Sydney's not ready to get intimate because a year earlier, her mom was raped and murdered.
Verbatim. Yeah, this is said repeatedly in the movie that she was raped and murdered, and that's a fact.
And Billy is not understanding of this. He's like, so what?
It's like, so you don't want to have sex?
So you can't have sex because your mom was raped and murdered? You're like, wow. All right, Billy. Jeez.
He's got a goal, and he's going for it. He's like, so what if your mom was raped and murdered? Let's just have sex.
Yeah, what does that have to do with me? I think he says something like that.
He's like, get over it.
Like, he's like, why do I have to suffer because of this?
All right.
Damn, dude. At this point, I'm thinking Billy, right? Just the way he's acting. It's like, here's where I'm like, Billy. I think Billy. Her dad is traveling for work. So like, right, setting up the classic movie, like she's going to be home alone for the weekend. You're like, okay, she's the target. I got it. But she's going to stay with her best friend named Tatum Riley. Tatum's played by Rose McGowan.
Randy, by the way, is Jamie Kennedy. We do meet a small pod of characters at the high school scene before this. So we have Matthew Lillard. He plays Stu, and he famously plays Shaggy.
He does.
In the live action Scooby-Doo movies.
Yep.
He actually does a lot of voice acting for Shaggy in recent years. And like over the past decade, he has so many credits for voicing Shaggy. So makes sense.
Good. He's a great Shaggy.
Jamie Kennedy, as we all famously know as Malibute from Malibu's Most Wanted, comedian, actor, kind of popped up a lot in early 2000s, late 90s projects.
Mm-hmm.
He plays like a fifth wheel of the group because we have Tatum and Stu, they're like a thing. And we have Sydney and Billy, they're kind of a thing. And Randy is just kind of like the odd man out, kind of like a video, or he's a movie pop culture nerd, kind of references a lot of horror movies.
Yeah, so he was my second suspect because I'm like,
because Ghostface has like a lot of movie trivia, and then so they kind of draw it up like, oh, let's look at Randy. He is the fifth wheel. He obviously likes Sydney.
Yeah.
And he knows a lot about scary movies. So
he says stuff all the time like, that doesn't sound right for a scary movie. You have to set it up differently. You have to do this. And I'm like, is this dude like some sort of OCD serial killer?
You're awfully knowledgeable about setups and crimes.
Yeah.
That's what every good mystery movie show does. They kind of draw up or at least lead the audience to believe that someone is suspicious based on what they want to show us. So Billy is a nimble bastard, and he's obsessed with Sydney and getting in her pants. And Randy also is into Sydney, and he knows a lot about horror movies. Stu, they do mention that when they were interviewing all the students at the school, and they asked all the guys like, oh, do you hunt? Because the victims were gutted and mutilated.
Yeah, Casey and Steve were completely hollowed out. And the fact is, it takes a man to do something like that.
How do you gut someone?
You take a knife and you slit them from groin to sternum.
Hey, it's called tact, you fuck rag.
Hey, Stu, didn't you used to date Casey?
Yeah, for like 2 seconds. Before she dumped him for Steve.
I thought you dumped her for me.
I did, he's full of shit. And are the police aware that you dated the victim? Hey, what are you saying? That I killed her?
It would certainly improve your high school Q.
Stu was with me last night, okay?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, they were really nonchalant about the killing. They're like, oh, I wonder who would like to spill somebody's guts. You're like, God dang, you guys are weird.
Yeah, so Stu's kind of graphic dialogue kind of lent him to be a suspect as well.
We're kind of, I don't know, we're kind of thinking everybody's a little suspicious.
So every good mystery horror movie likes to build up everyone as a suspect. And Randy even says that, being hella meta later on. He says everyone's a suspect in a horror movie. Yeah, Sydney gets attacked, and
She does end up receiving a call, the same one that Drew Barrymore got at the beginning of the movie.
the same kind of weird flirty energy from Sydney. She's like, "Ooh, you sound kind of sexy. Is that
This
you,
is
Randy?"
mysterious.
If you hang up on me, you'll die just like your mother. Do you want to die, Sydney? Your mother sure didn't.
And she's attacked by Ghostface. Ghostface comes back pretty quick in the movie. So I was thinking, oh, we're going to have suspense till the next time we see Ghostface. Ghostface is just a constant staple in this movie, just pops up throughout. And pretty randomly, which I think is a good device, right? Because you just don't know when Ghostface is coming. But he disappears. Ghostface disappears right before Billy comes. You're like, that's weird.
And now before this scene, so this is at Sydney's house where she is staying alone.
Mm-hmm.
As she walks up to her house with the subtitles on, you can see it says dogs barking, and then Sydney looks over his shoulders like in the fields. So I'm taking that as like, oh, Ghostface is like he's creeping up in the forest, and the dog or he's in the neighborhood, or dogs see him, they're barking. You better watch out, Sydney.
Then Ghostface disappears randomly, just kind of bounces, and then Billy appears through the window. And we're like, oh, Billy, Sydney's like, Billy's here. The day's safe. And as they embrace, Billy drops his cell phone.
No, Nick.
She's like,
no.
What
does he drop?
Oh,
A cellular phone.
sorry.
They dropped the word cellular 18 times.
It's a big thing.
Can we trace a cellular? Everyone's got a cellular phone. What are you doing with a cellular phone?
1996, man. Big deal.
Huge deal.
These kids in Woodsboro were doing all right for themselves if they all have cellulars.
Dude, you got to call everybody after 8 p.m. That's why he's murdering at night. Get those free minutes.
He doesn't have the rollover minutes. That's his issue.
People born before 1995 know what we're talking about.
So he drops his cellular phone, and she's like, Billy? And then the cops are already on their way. They show up, and they arrest Billy. He's arrested by Deputy Sheriff Dewey Riley. So this is Tatum's older brother, and this is played by David Arquette.
Yeah, David Arquette is a guy that I just know from the 90s, and I haven't seen him since.
No, I feel like he may have gone crazy. I can never keep track of the Arquettes, man. There's a lot of them. I feel like he's done some reality shows, maybe. So if you're keeping track with us, when we were saying there's a lot of names going on here, like Matthew Lillard, David Arquette, Nev Campbell, Courtney Cox,
Drew Barrymore,
Skeet,
Ulrich,
Rose McGowan. We have a lot.
And Courtney Cox, who plays Gail Weathers. If that ain't a news anchor name, I don't know what is. I gotta say something about the news people. On that first high school scene, there's like hella newsmans. They were like releasing minors' names on the news. I didn't think you could do that.
I mean, the 90s are a different time, man. It was lawless.
It's just the Wild West, I guess. But the news people are like the goddamn paparazzi. Gail Weathers. She's like a journalist, out in the field reporter. She has it out for Sydney, and she's like beefing with this teenager because Sydney put away what Gail believes is an innocent man for the rape and murder of her mom. This guy's name, what was the guy's name? It was like Cotton Eye Joe.
The name is Cotton Weary. Do you know who this is?
I do know who this is. I didn't see the name until the credits, and I was like, holy shit, Liv Schreiber?
You just see him on the TV, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, you kind of barely see him.
Apparently he's like a lead in Scream 2.
Okay, so that makes more sense. Like they were kind of building up like this character to appear in the sequel. So Sydney's testimony put Cotton-Eyed Weary Joe in prison for the rape and murder of her mom. And Gail Weathers is like, I don't believe this shit, so I'm out to get you, Sydney. And Sydney's mad at Gail because she's a full-grown adult going after her head and trying to write a book about the murder case of her mom and the wrongful incarceration of Cotton-Eyed Weary Joe. So they be beefing. And the news guys are like paparazzi. They're like ruthless with these teenagers. especially Sydney.
Dude, they're all up in their grill.
Yeah, and again, they released Sydney's name on the news immediately. Like Ghostface attacks her the night before, and the news is like TMZ. They're all over it. They're like, "Oh, Sydney Prescott was attacked last night. You may famously remember her as the daughter of so-and-so Prescott who was murdered last year."
Yeah, you're like, dang, this town just knows everybody.
No morals.
So the principal of the high school is Principal Himbry, is played by Henry Winkler.
Yay.
That's the Fonz. The Fonz is here. Fun fact about that, his name's not in the credits. He's uncredited.
I see that on IMDb right now.
Yeah, he wanted to go uncredited because he said there's so many talented young actors and actresses in this movie that I don't want my name to dwarf them at all. So I just want to go uncredited. Henry Winkler, if you've ever heard him talk, if you ever heard, just his philosophy in acting in Hollywood, he is just a stand-up dude. I love me some Henry Winkler. Great guy.
Well, speaking of Henry Winkler, he's also a suspect because he is unhinged at his students.
Big time unhinged.
Running around as basically copycats of Ghostface. He
so many Ghostface.
He wrangles two of them in his office, and he even whips out an old timey murder pair of scissors. And when he unwields it, it's like shing! He's like, "I ought to gut you for what you did. This is not funny." And you're thinking, maybe Henry Winkler murdered those teenagers because he hates teens.
He's also good friends with Fred the janitor at the school,
who looks like Freddy Krueger's unemployed brother. Sorry, not unemployed because he has a job as a janitor, but not the same career, Freddy Krueger.
Now, what's funny about him looking like Freddy Krueger, what movie is Freddy Krueger from? Nightmare on Elm Street.
Well, I was going to say, this is Wes Craven just making a little meta reference to himself, saying, because Henry Winkler looks out and Fred the janitor, who is literally wearing Freddy Krueger's outfit, goes like, "Huh?" And then Henry Winkler's like, "Not now, Fred." And the audience is like, it's funny.
Again, that self-aware nature of this movie. Yeah, it has that personality of a self-aware movie. So Wes Craven basically dressed as...
Oh, was that Wes Craven?
Yeah, it was Wes Craven doing a cameo as Fred the janitor.
Oh, okay. That makes it even better.
Oh, I thought you got that. Oh.
No. I don't know what Wes Craven... I don't know what the Crave looks like. But okay, I see here on IMDb, Fred the janitor.
Yeah. I didn't know it either when I saw the movie, but going back through the credits and I saw Fred the janitor, Wes Craven, and I was like,
nice. I like
that's so funny because he was so in on the meta himself. He's like, I'm going to be Freddy Krueger. That's my movie anyway.
Dude, season 2 is like the season of directors making cameos in their movies.
Yeah, I love how self-aware this is.
That was great.
So we go to the police station after Billy's arrested because his cellular phone was there and he was at the scene and it was all pretty sketchy. Sydney is confronted again by Gail, who just keeps going in on her dead raped mom and says, "Your mom had several affairs, including one with Cotton-Eyed Weary, and he was wrongly accused of murder." And Sydney's like, I was just attacked. I was just attacked by a murderer. Why? What are we doing here? Why are you doing this to me?
Relax. And she punches her out like a pretty mean right hook.
She knows what she's doing. To which I'm like, she needs to do that to Ghostface.
Well, meanwhile, in the interrogation room, Billy is with his father being interviewed by the law enforcement peeps. The dad says, "Can you run the cellular records?" He's like, check the cellular records. And so we're introduced to his dad very briefly. And so we learned that, it was not Billy because
the phone calls weren't coming from his phone. So yeah, it was Sydney's dad's phone, and Sydney's dad at this point I think has been missing now for a while. They found his abandoned car.
Well, they were trying at the very beginning of that mystery. They were trying to just locate him. They were calling the hotels that he was supposedly staying at, and David Arquette says, "Can you clone a cellular?" when talking about Neil's phone, the dad, and they're like, "I don't know. Can you? I don't know."
I don't know if you could in 1996.
That's another mystery brewing in the background.
Yeah, so we have a lot of sketchy characters, but at this point, I'm thinking to myself, okay, so I thought it was Billy, but now I'm like, this is too obvious. Billy's too obvious. He just got cleared, but he's going to be kind of suspected, but Billy's just too obvious. So
I was watching this with my wife, and she's like, "I think Billy's a killer." And I was like, that's way too obvious. He's obviously super one-track minded about banging Sydney. He's creepy. He kind of looked like a dollar store young Johnny Depp.
Yeah.
And actually, these days, based on his headshot, he kind of looks like a dollar store young Dane Cook. So that's what Skeet's all about.
Yeah, he's kind of got the messy, spiky hair going on.
Yeah, look at this guy's IMDb profile pic. He looks exactly like a young Dane Cook.
Yeah.
Well, like Dane Cook's cousin, Skeet Cook.
So after Billy's release, we find ourselves back at school, and there's this scene where he's talking to Sydney, and he talks about like how his mom isn't really around, and that's comparable to Sydney's dead mom, who was raped and murdered.
Yeah, he's like, "Can you just get over it? And like, can we have sex?" Like, gosh.
You're like, what? Like, this guy, man.
This guy sucks.
He's a really bad guy, but this has to be misdirection, right? This has to be misdirection. He's just a sack of shit.
I think about this all the time, and I'm like, I forgot to like apply it to the time period, because there was a time period when, you know, a lot of folks were super obvious and then they end up being the killer. And then there was like a moment where they flipped the switch and said, no, we're going to make this super obvious, but they're not the killer. And then they flipped another switch later on and said, this person's super obvious, this person's unsuspecting, but this third party, who technically has been introduced and we've technically laid out breadcrumbs, is actually the killer. So you got to remember, there's like layers to the complication reveals of who the killers are and how obvious they're being. But at this point, we don't know.
At this point, I'm suspecting anybody. I'm thinking it could be Tatum's brother, Deputy Sheriff Dewey. I'm like, he wants everybody to think he's cool, so maybe he's killing people so that he can solve the case. Like,
I thought that too.
There's a lot of weird random motives, at least 90s horror motives.
Gail.
Yeah, she's nuts.
Her cameraman named Kenny.
He's a weirdo.
Who she just shits on for being fat.
We still have Sydney's dad out there. We have Tatum, who's, I don't know. She hasn't been around at the same time as the killer.
So the phone call is coming from the dad's phone. I was like, that's also too obvious. There's no way.
Dad's trying to kill his daughter. I don't know.
But we'll see.
So their high school gets suspended in the wake of the murders, which is probably the right call. Like, hey, people are dying, go home. And Principal Hembry's also like, I'm not putting up with these. Like, everybody's in a ghost face mask. There's a part where Sydney's like in the bathroom and she's hearing girls gossip about her. Super fucked up stuff. They're like, yeah, she's crazy. Her mom was raped and killed. Like, can you believe it? And I'm like, what is wrong with you people? What is actually wrong with you people? But the school gets suspended, and Ghostface is in the school when the kids are gone, and our poor Principal Henry Winkler, is stricken down by Ghostface.
Super dead.
I'm like, dang.
Just speaking about the students running around in Ghostface costumes, it also didn't help that the news stations broadcasted the costume on air and said, this is the costume that everyone is dressing up as. Now you know about it, and you should go buy it. It's like you just set off this town full of hooligans to spirit Halloween.
I could just imagine in today's world where there was a serial killer who wore a mask and it got put out, and the new TikTok trend would be to go like stand outside people's house in this mask. Like, kids are so dumb.
Or just like the meme culture of today's times. If they said, hey, somebody is running around rubbing his wiener on cars and he's wearing this costume, so look out for this guy. I know for a fact every single frat bro would be like, dude, we got to go get that costume and like run around, rub wieners on cars.
Yeah.
It's like, you just made the situation way worse. You should not broadcast that.
Should not have released that.
Rub your dicks on the car as you run away. You turned my beautiful Prius into a nightmare.
The news is like almost the antagonist in this movie, the media.
The damn media.
It accelerates the town's demise and a lot of murders.
To celebrate the closure of the school, no one knows the principal's dead yet. To celebrate the closure of the school, our guy Stu, Shaggy, who I'll probably refer to him as in this podcast, he's gonna like, let's celebrate. I'm gonna throw a party at my super secluded home. Also, apparently half these kids don't have parents. He's just like, yeah, come over to my house.
Yeah, there's a lot of like dialogue. It's like, my parents are out of town. It's like, how many times are your parents out of town?
Dewey and Gail show up to the party, and they're gonna keep watch outside of the party in case the killer strikes. Dewey and Gail have this like romance going on. At first I thought Gail was like playing him to get information, but that turns out that they're actually like having this super awkward like flirt going on. So we're at this party, and our high school boy, our Randy right? Our horror movie lover. He's detailing all the rules of surviving a horror film.
There are certain rules that one must abide by in order to successfully survive a horror movie. Number 1, you can never have sex. Number 2, you can never drink or do drugs. And number 3, never, ever, ever, under any circumstances say, I'll be right back. Because you won't be back.
I'm getting another beer. You want one?
Yeah, sure.
I'll be right back.
Again, this is a weird part of Randy. You're like, you know a lot about horror films. So I'm going back to when Ghostface was stalking Drew Barrymore and asking her all these horror movie questions. I'm like, you know too much about horror movies. Also, why wouldn't you just watch a comedy at this point? Like, everybody's traumatized. Nobody needs to watch a horror movie.
Yeah, the teens they're just they're rebellious. They just like to embrace the chaos. They're all one bad day away from becoming the Joker. And actually, back in the video store where Randy works, someone comes up and says, "Hey, do you know where this movie is with this person?" And he says, "Yeah, top shelf back on the right." Going back to what you said about a little OCD, a little bit just like calculated brain, not socially there, because all he can really do is bring up like movie references and pop culture. He loves horror movies. So this is when I'm like, Randy, I'm watching you.
He's like the bookstore owner in Signs.
Exactly.
Over there, second shelf.
Cut from the same cloth. Stu is in the scene, and Randy I think he's talking to him about how Billy is suspicious. And then Billy pops up behind him out of nowhere.
There's a formula to it. A very simple formula. Everybody's a suspect. I'm telling you, the dad's a red herring. It's Billy.
How do we know you're not the killer?
Huh? Hi, Billy.
Maybe your movie freaked mind lost its reality button. You ever think of that?
You're absolutely right. I'm the first to admit it. If this were a scary movie, I'd be the prime suspect.
He's like, Jesus. And then Billy's being all creepy up in his face. And I think this is when he says, like, you're obsessed with Sid. You think you can get with her, but that's sad. And you're a loser. And Stu's behind him, kind of also like breathing down his neck. It's like they're getting off on Dog and the beta of the group.
Yeah. They're bullies. You're like, okay. But again, I'm like, too obvious.
Because then Billy, so Billy like says something creepy and then walks away, and then Jamie Kennedy looks at Stu and says, like, "You're telling me that guy's not a killer?" It's some good like comedy moments in this movie, and again, it's adding to the self-aware meta-ness of this movie as well.
Yeah. At this point, Tatum goes out to the garage by herself. I would at this point implement the buddy system. With Ghostface running around and be like, you're never by yourself. You always,
especially with him targeting Sydney. She's at the party,
and just high school kids. So she goes out to the garage to get some beers, because every high school kid just has free access to a fridge full of beers,
garage beers.
And she tries to go back out, back into the house from the garage door. It's locked, and we're like, here we go. Here comes Ghostface.
Anytime a teen is about to get got, there's like this weird fisheye lens, like wide shot of the room, and it's not like a POV of Ghostface, but it kind of, I guess it's like a subconscious clue, like shit's about to go down, or Ghostface is showing up and he's about to murder. I don't know if you caught that, but
I didn't.
There's a lot of weird shots in this. Yeah, there's a lot of like that scene at the fountain with all the kids in the beginning. It looked like they were just like, it was like super wide lensed, and it was like up in their face, and like their heads were super big and the background was all distorted.
I did notice that. There were some odd
visuals with the camera work
and whatnot. I don't know if those were intentional.
Like, what are you trying to say, Crave?
So Tatum finds herself out in the garage, toe-to-toe with Ghostface. Puts up a hell of a fight. I mean, she knocks him down, hits his head with the freezer door at one point. She really throws down with Ghostface.
He's kind of vulnerable physically. Like, he's not like a Michael Myers, like, walking robot. Like, I'm just going to walk through walls and come at you with my knife. Show me what you got.
Yeah, it's definitely a human.
Like, because Ghostface, like, gets bottles thrown at it, and they're like, ugh, and they're like, ow. And, like, the freezer door gets there. I mean, you assume it's a guy because there's multiple nut shots, and Ghostface really reacts to that badly. So you're like, okay, a woman wouldn't really keel over after getting hit.
Not saying a VAD shot doesn't hurt.
I mean, no, wham bam straight to the clam. That's gonna hurt.
You're gonna react,
but not as much as a ball shot, a nut shot. But yeah, he's kind of like clumsy and gets his ass kicked a lot of times.
Yeah, and again, this kind of goes back to where I'm like, Randy, he's kind of a nerd, kind of,
Right?
I'm like, he's not strong, coordinated.
Some kind of, almost like you're like, maybe some everyman is underneath there.
And then that also makes me think it's not her dad who has like older dad strength, like an older guy. It definitely seems like a kid, right? Who's a little uncoordinated, a little, frantic.
Unless they're downplaying the dad strength.
That's a tough look too.
Yeah.
So Tatum has him on the ropes, and instead of like pounding on the door, asking for help, or going over with a bottle and trying to, or unmask this dude, she decides there's a doggy door in the garage door. Now, I've seen this before. It's very random. I would never have a doggy door in my garage door because you're just going to get raccoons in your garage. Don't do that, people.
Unless you have the little metal slidey door that blocks it, and you put that up at night. These parents that left for the weekend, they're just like, whatever.
I also don't recall a dog at the house.
Yeah, no dog.
So there's this dog door, and she's going to make a break for the dog door. The panel or the button to hit the garage door opens right next to her. She's like, no time. So she runs, gets halfway through the dog door. Ghostface just hits the button. Garage door starts pulling up, opens up, and then just crushes her.
Her head is caved in from the ceiling, the frame.
Now, the funniest part about all of this is that through the next, all the way through almost the end of the movie, no one sees her. She's just her body's just hanging off of this garage door. And there's people who are coming and going out of the house, and she's right there, 20 feet to the right, and nobody sees this.
Fucking Tatum didn't grab the garage beers. Guess I'll get them.
Yeah, holy shit.
These teens are a problem. So a lot of them clear out because they hear that their super dead principal is hanging by the goalpost at the football field at school. And all of them, instead of saying like, oh my God, they say, oh dude, let's go over there and check it out before the cops string them down. We probably get like 16 underage teens driving drunk to the school.
Down this one-lane country road.
Just hella DUIs. That's the last we see of those guys, and I can only assume they all drove into a ditch.
Well, they end up driving Dewey and Gail off into a ditch, and they find Neil's abandoned car, and they're like, holy shit, this is
Sydney's
Neil's
dad.
car. Yeah. So Sydney stayed back at the house. Tatum stayed back at the house, but she's super dead. Randy stayed back at the house, and we don't know Stu and Billy's whereabouts. So our core five.
Well, Stu's there. He's watching scary movies with Randy.
Oh yeah, but okay, he's there. Yeah,
Billy's
but I'm saying,
kind of a wild card.
The core five didn't go to see the principal hanging.
Right.
But Billy arrives to the house, reconciles with Sydney, and they finally bang.
Hell yeah.
She's like, wow, I am reacting to all of this stress and fear, and it's time for us to bang. Don't know what really got her into that moment, but she's like, whatever, let's do it.
Let me say something here. So Nev Campbell, Sydney says, hey, who did you call? And we're like, what? Like Billy? Like, you mean on his cellular? Did he call his victim? What do you mean? And even Billy's like, what do you mean? And she's like, for your first phone call, you get one phone call when you go to jail. Who'd you call? And he says, I called my dad, but he didn't answer. And then there's like a weird, he kind of stares off into space. And I was like, wait a minute. Is it Billy's dad? Is he the killer? Is he the unsuspecting third party killer? This is hour 20 in. I'm like, it could be Billy's dad. Maybe he was having an affair with the mom because everyone kept calling her those mean girls in the bathroom. They're like, yeah, Sydney's mom is such a slut. She's a hoe bag. And so I'm like, all right, I guess Sydney's mom gets around. Maybe she was banging the dad and like his wife left him or something. So I was like, it could be Billy's dad because he was introduced. He kind of fits the frame. He's kind of like he doesn't strike me as a dad strength dad.
Yeah.
So I can totally see him being like a frail, nerdy psycho murderer.
Billy's mom ran off for some reason. We know.
Yeah. And he's also kind of like weird looking. If you go back to the police interrogation scene, you're like, you're kind of typecasted as like a strange, creepy guy. And I don't like it. So then like Billy says like, oh, he didn't answer. And then Sydney's like, oh, but yeah, he did. He was at the station. And then he says, no, the cops called him. And then he answered then. So I was like, I think it's Billy's dad. 30 seconds later, Ghostface comes in and stabs Billy. And I'm like, oh, maybe it's not Billy's dad. That'd be kind of weird if he just murdered his son.
Breaks in, stabs his son. You're like, holy shit.
So I was like, okay, I'm super wrong.
In the meantime, Ghostface goes on a spree, kills Gail's cameraman, Kenny, stabs Officer Dewey. Sydney evades Ghostface. I think she like climbs out the window or something.
Yeah, this is like in the news van.
Now we're just hitting this climax where just people are getting stabbed.
Lots of tense suspense. So we're thinking Sydney's dad could possibly be in the mix. Billy is dead at this point, presumably. So we're like, it's not Billy. Randy is there.
He's in the house.
We don't cut back to the movie watching scene until Ghostface kills Billy. And Gail actually is illegally filming minors. She put a camera in there and Kenny is just watching it. So he's watching the movie watching scene. And this is another great meta portion where Randy's watching Halloween and he says, look out behind you, look out behind you. And Ghostface is behind him. And then Kenny is watching the live feed 30-second delay feed in the van. And he says, Randy, look out behind you. And you're just like, this is suspenseful. This is frightening. This is comedy.
But he goes out and kills Kenny on the 30-second delay. And that's funny, too, because Kenny's suspenseful. He thinks that Randy's going to die.
Kenny is the one who said it's on a 30-second delay. And then he's like, no, watch out. He's like, oh, wait a minute. It's not a live feed. It's like, you know this. You do this for a profession, Kenny.
This is when I turn around and look at the front of the house and be like, oh, shit, he's here.
I mean, Ghostface is a fucking ninja, by the way, because he's just waltzing around Woodsboro in full costume in like the liquor market, in the forest. Like no one notices him. And he just can disappear in an instant.
Yeah, in some ways he's very clumsy and uncoordinated. In other ways he's a freaking ninja.
Close quarter combat, super clumsy. Traversing and mobility, level 100 ninja.
It's like if you took a parkour guy and asked him to go in a boxing ring. He doesn't have it, but he can parkour.
Oh yeah.
Gail tries to get in her van and flee, but she crashes and gets knocked unconscious. Good job, Gail.
Kenny's on the roof of the van. She's like, get the hell off the roof, or get the hell off my windshield, Kenny. And then it's like, wow, damn. All right, Gail. Savage.
She did. Sydney hides in the house and she ends up locking Stu and Randy outside, and they're accusing each other of being the killer. So it's like I go back to Pluto Nash. He's the guy. No, that's the real Pluto Nash. No, I'm the real Pluto Nash.
They should have been wearing matching black and red tuxes. If Pluto Nash showed up, I'd lose it. But Stu is unaccounted for a hot minute there.
And Randy's sitting on the couch, and Ghostface is behind him. So now we're like, it's not Randy. Okay, Billy's dead. Tatum's dead. Dewey was stabbed.
Gail like crashed a car. She like crashed a car.
Yeah, knocked
down the
unconscious. So everybody's accounted for. Where's
you're
Stu?
like, wait, you're like, Stu's been missing for a minute. And now that I'm thinking about it right now as we record this, he said, I'm going to go get more beers. I don't know why I didn't catch this, but the beers are in the garage and he didn't say anything about his super dead girlfriend.
Super dead.
Super dead.
So at this moment, okay, Emily's like, it's Stu. It has to be Stu. And I'm slow. I'm like, hold on. Let me get all this information. Stop calling this shit out.
Let me put the pieces together.
Shut your smart woman brain up and let my dumbass man brain catch up. All right. So Randy and Stu are yelling at each other, screaming. It's pandemonium. Billy comes downstairs, injured, stabbed, and Sydney grabs the pistol off of Dewey. Does she point it at Randy and Stu?
Yeah.
Yeah, she's a little delirious. She's a little having like a bit of a crazy moment. And she just decides, I'm just going to shut the door. Sydney doesn't know what to believe. She's freaking out. And Billy's like, oh, give me the gun. At this moment, me and Emily were like, no. This guy's not just going to waltz on downstairs after getting brutally stabbed, ask for the firearm, and be innocent. There's no way.
Never give up the gun. If you're in a situation, never.
If you know you're innocent and you don't know who to trust,
you never give up the gun. That's
Sydney.
trope 101.
Randy comes from around the back. He comes back in the house.
Yeah. Billy takes the gun and then shoots him in the shoulder. Just wings him.
Oh, doesn't wing him. Billy whips out the gun. He's like, everybody goes a little mad sometimes. You're like, God damn it. Billy's a killer. He got the gun. And he shoots Randy in the shoulder. Randy goes, oh, fuck. And then like he gets shot in the shoulder, but he is sent back. Like he got smacked by a vehicle.
Yeah. He is.
Like 8 men, like with a battering ram, just knocked him back 10 feet.
Yeah. He gets ripped.
Pummeled by this single bullet.
And you're like, what the fuck? And then we also find out he has an accomplice, which is Stu.
Mm.
Of course. Of course, it's a buddy deal,
More than one ghost face.
which explains how Billy got stabbed.
How he gets around so fast?
Yeah, so he's going to kill Sydney after banging her. He's like, wow, we finally got to bang. Now I can kill you.
Time to die.
Time to die. They revealed they've had her dad tied up in the house for days.
Dad, you're alive? What the hell?
They're going to frame him as the killer. So they were using his cellular to make the calls, right? They're framing him. I like to, I'm always questioning, like, wouldn't they recognize, like, that he's been bound and tied and beaten for the last, like, 3 days? I don't know. I don't think they thought a lot of this through.
I mean, they're teens.
I chalk that up. That's not a plot hole for me. I'm just like, they clearly didn't think this one through.
They could have spun a lie. They could have said, like, we tied him up as like a, we wanted to like capture him. So we tied him up and then we felt bad and he apologized and let him go. And then he turned on us. They can make it some bullshit.
They're sociopaths. We find out that Billy is the one who raped and killed Sydney's mom because Sydney's mom did have an affair with Billy's dad. And that's what drove his mom away. So instincts were right.
Did he have sex with her?
I mean, she was raped and killed and he killed her. So
I thought it was, I thought the rape part was just speculated because what the hell, Cotton Eye Joe, Cotton Weary.
Oh.
It like had sex with him and then was seen leaving the house and then she was also dead. So I thought Sydney just like speculated that she was raped and murdered.
Unconfirmed.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that Billy is the one that in fact murdered the mom.
That we know.
So we don't necessarily know if she was a victim of rape.
Wouldn't put it past this psychopath.
But she was definitely having an affair with Cotton Weary. But Billy is the one who goes after the mom. And the audience is all asking, why? We want motive. This is a horror movie. We need motive. We need reason because this is a movie. Things don't just happen. He does start out by saying, you know what? There is no motive. And that's the scary part, which I kind of liked. I was like, you know what? Yeah, sometimes
it's just evil.
Psychos are going to psycho. But then he does drop a little information bomb on us that, the mom was having an affair with the dad and Billy's mom left him. And then he's like, and she abandoned me. And that really did a number on my psyche. So it's like, it wasn't like 2 years ago. You're not like 8. Get over it.
Yeah.
Like you're trying to have sex with Sydney so bad. Like you know what, like you're trying to fill your greedy desires. Like it's not like she abandoned you when you were like 4 years old and that really messed you up.
Yeah. It really sounded a lot more like less of a motive and more of an excuse for him to be a psycho. Like he's trying to justify it to himself.
Right. And I think at the end of the day, because me and Emily were like, why'd Stu do it? What's his deal? And Stu, I think he just says like he's impressionable or he's vulnerable. It's like a pretty it's just a one-liner excuse. We're just like, okay, I guess we'll just take that for face value. When you watch this movie and think about it, you're like, there's got to be like other reasons why. And it's probably has to do with like the backstory of these characters. But anyway, we're on face value.
And that kind of makes it almost a scarier. And we kind of get some insight into how psychotic they are because they take knives and they just start stabbing each other. And they've researched where to stab each other so they're not going to die from it. And so they're stabbing each other so they look like they're victims of Neil, of Sydney's dad. So when the cops show up, but they start like stabbing each other for real. It's actually pretty funny. It's not supposed to be too funny of a scene, but there's some comedy in it where Stu's like, I'm losing a lot of blood, man.
Oh, no, twice he gives us the New Yorker treatment. He's like, I'm bleeding here.
Stop it, Billy, would you, all right? I can't take anymore. I'm feeling woozy here.
Oh, New York Shaggy.
But they just take turns like stabbing each other. They're all psycho. You're like, okay, so you guys really just are psychos. There's no excusable motive here. But they are interrupted when Gail returns.
She has the gun? How'd she get the gun?
Billy put the gun down.
Idiots. So she has the gun and she does this thing that drives me nuts when I see in movies. When she holds the pistol, she holds it full extension, one arming it at the suspect, trembling. If you've never held a gun before, put it all the way back on your like chest, have 2 hands on it so no one can grab it away from you. Don't stick it out stiff arming like and trembling with the gun, especially if you've never shot a gun before. Just like keep it close.
Yeah.
I have the weapon and you can't get it from me.
And they go through talking. Never let the person talk. Just show up, boom, Fire your shots.
You got Liam Neeson in that situation. Taken.
Don't let him say a word. There's nothing they can say. So she gets knocked out. She basically gets pistol whipped out. Doesn't get double tapped, right? Nobody confirms kills at this point.
A lot of lack of double tap.
So while everybody's dealing with Gail, Sydney does get the upper hand on Billy. He's like looking around like, where are you? She busts out of the closet with an umbrella and just stabs him through the chest. You're like, oh, damn. Doesn't confirm the kill.
She does decide to don Ghostface. She's like, I'm going to put on this whole costume as like a funny gag.
I thought she should have freed her dad. That would have been nice to have an extra set of hands in this scene.
Dead weight.
Leaves her dad.
He's malnourished. What is he going to do?
That's a good point. His blood sugar is pretty low. Sydney gets into it with Stu, drops a TV set on his head.
He gets like super electrocuted because before he bites the dust, he's like laying on top of Sydney, very predator position, and says like, I've always had a thing for you. And you're just like, oh no, kill it. And so you're like, okay, there's another nugget of backstory with Stu. But then she drops a TV on his head and he gets electrocuted.
Billy has been stabbed a ton. He got stabbed in the post-coital moment by a Ghostface Stu.
Well, that was a fake, as we know. Because he says later, he's like, oh, corn syrup. The same thing they use in movies. Yeah, so the first stabbing was a fake.
Gets stabbed a lot by Stu in the kitchen in their psycho stabbing. And then gets stabbed multiple times by the umbrella by Sydney. And he is still chugging.
Terminator.
Guess who shows back up, this time with the safety off?
Gail, dog.
Gail fucking Weathers. So she shoots Billy, and Randy's still there, right? Randy got blown back, got shot in the shoulder, but he's like, no, my issue with this scene is it's just like, you never know who's dead, who's alive. Like somebody got hit, maybe they're dead, they got stabbed, I don't know, they got shot. Nope, here they are.
But Randy even calls that out. He even calls it out. He says like, this is the moment when you don't know if the killer's dead or not, if he's going to jump up. And he does exactly that. And then finally, Nev Campbell double taps Billy. We're like, okay, finally. I was like, go in the other room, double taps too.
Yeah, splits his wig. Split everybody's wig in that house.
Split all the wigs.
Go wig splitting.
Go into Spirit Halloween, find all the wigs, and split them.
So now he's finally dead, and we're like, okay, we're good. Movie ends as the sun's coming back up. Neil, her dad, is rescued. Dewey is taken away in an ambulance. Our officer Dewey, David Arquette, is alive. He's good to go. And Gail does an impromptu news report about the night's events, and she's kind of bloodied and whatnot. Her cameraman Kenny is dead. That doesn't stop her from doing the news.
No, I was going to say sans cameraman Kenny because he's hella dead out in the driveway.
And that's Scream. That's our plot talk for Scream.
Directed by Wes Craven, a.k.a. the Craveness.
The Crave Man.
Crave Man. What? All right, you got any nitpicks?
Nitpicks. The ending scene for me is a nitpick in the movie. It's just very confusing about who got stabbed, who's dead, who's down for the count, who's going to come back. Oh, this person come back. We got them. Are they dead this time? Didn't double tap. It's just like characters keep showing back up to take each other out. And then Tatum's death, where her body's just hanging outside on the garage door for the whole party.
No one cares.
And everybody's just leaving the party like, Principal's dead. Principal's dead. And they hop in the car and zoom off.
Dude, they're psychotic.
And Tatum's just hanging there.
Getting their 94 Mustangs and peel out.
But that's all I had.
The only one I can think of is just the super unbalanced skill set of Ghostface. Ghostface is, because it's two people. But maybe it makes a little bit more sense because there's two people committing the crimes. Because I was wondering how are they moving around so quickly? How do they string up people to trees so quickly? How are they gutting people so quickly? But actually, it makes sense if they were both there.
It's a two-man operation.
Makes total sense. Actually, no nitpicks. No nitpicks. When a movie comes into it being self-aware, ready to laugh at itself, they kind of draw it up like we know that horror movies fall into tropes, and we're calling that out. So you can't get too mad at it.
Well, what you just said actually brings me to my first talking point, if you're ready to go there.
Yeah.
Just the self-aware nature of this movie. Like, this movie had a lot of personality from Wes Craven's cameo as Freddy Krueger, the talking about horror movies nonstops, and here's the horror movie tropes, and here's how you survive the horror movie. You got to be a virgin. Oh, she just lost her virginity to Billy. You know, you can't be drunk. I mean, there were just a lot of things in this movie, and I want to know what you thought of it because I personally did enjoy that.
Loved it. At a certain point, yeah, I think like 1996 was the turning point when we're like, we got to call this out because we can't just watch the same old horror movies over and over and over again with the same old tropes. We need to either make something new or just kind of make an homage to every great serial killer movie like Halloween, stalker, slasher, killer movie, and kind of bring it into like a more modern, I mean, for 96, a more modern day fun pop version of a slasher film. So I very much enjoyed it, and it definitely added to the positive points on my side of things.
Me too. I thought it made the movie much more enjoyable. There's nothing worse than when a movie like this tries to take itself too seriously. Because I can forgive a lot of stuff when you're intentionally being a little campy.
Yeah, and when you are being too serious, then you are definitely first in line to be parodied for the next scary movie.
I like how Scream really went ahead and said, we're going to take ourselves seriously through these spurts of the movie, these 10, 15 minutes of death and stalking and psychotic. And then in between that, we're going to give the audience a bit of a break and almost get you into a little bit of a lull, right? Kind of comedy, fun. It's the 90s. We had David Arquette and all these characters that you know and love, and Henry Winkler's there, and he's kind of funny. And then, boom, all of a sudden, you're snapped out of that comedy. You're snapped into the world of Ghostface, and then it's going to be stressful for 10 minutes. And then we get back into the comedy and kind of rinse, repeat that. I thought it was good.
Yeah, that's a formula of like very watchable, successful movies is just incorporating different tones and an even flow. Like giving us some comedy, giving us some drama, giving us some suspense, some action. It's kind of tough to go through a whole movie just monotone.
I think that adds to the rewatchability factor, right? You probably saw this in theaters multiple times. And you're like, I got to go again. We're going to bring the friends. It was fun. 2, my theory about movies is in your movie, you need to have something quotable, memorable, something that's referenceable. And like a lot of horror movies nowadays, you would never leave the theaters and like say a quote from a horror movie and it be recognized in society. You got to have something memorable in there. You got to have something that hits the zeitgeist. And like this movie has that.
This has that X factor. Now, Nick, watching this movie, did you kind of notice any like thing with the location? Because my wife, being a Southern California native, both of us, I've said this before on the podcast, for 7 years, we were in the film and TV industry in Los Angeles. So we're always looking for recognizable filming locations. Did you happen to pick up on or investigate where this was filmed?
Did not.
So it's actually in the Northern California region. This is filmed a lot around Santa Rosa, Glen Allen, Healdsburg.
Really?
Yeah. And I was wondering, I didn't find out why, but maybe they just wanted a different tone, maybe just an LA slasher horror film wouldn't cut it. Maybe they just want to go a little bit more foresty because that kind of fits the mood, fits the mysterious, the spooky vibes, if you will. Spooky season. This doesn't look like anything that I recognize in LA because we also dealt with filming permits and locations. So we knew a lot of the exterior shots. We're like, this doesn't look like Big Bear. This doesn't look like it's out on Highway 2. The town square, we were thinking we've been there before.
It's always fun to recognize places.
Yeah, so I thought that was neat. I give this movie kudos for getting out of LA and going to a cool part of the state. Now, Nick, my last and final talking point here. I have the gay theory.
Oh.
So it's speculated. The Scream movies, they're held in high regards in the LGBTQ plus community. That whole community loves the Scream slasher movies. So back in the day, a lot of people speculated, especially the gay community. They're like, are Stu and Billy a thing? And it does kind of become apparent in those undertones in like the video store scene with Billy and Stu, like as they're like kind of like hawking over Randy in the final scene when Billy's like staring down Sydney. Stu is like behind him like a proud partner, and they're like super close, super intimate. Here's an article from pridesource.com. So Scream screenwriter Kevin Williamson confirms that Billy and Stu's queer-coded relationship was based on real gay killers. So this guy he's openly gay, and he does say like the Scream movies have been, in his own words, coded in queer. As of last year in this article, January 12th, 2022, he does admit that, oh yeah, no, they had the thing for each other. And then so they interviewed Nev Campbell and they said, oh, did you think they were in a relationship? And Nev Campbell was like, oh yeah, oh no, big time. And they were definitely a thing. That kind of lends a little bit of aid to why, or to the question of why was Stu in on this? The screenwriter said that it was based on real serial killers of the Leopold and Loeb case. This is from a PBS article. When I read this article, you may agree, like, yeah, that is totally Billy and Stu. So the Leopold and Loeb trial in 1924. This is a trial of two men that killed a 14-year-old kid. So Nathan Leopold and Richard Loeb were teenagers living in a wealthy Chicago suburb when they were arrested for murder. Loeb, he was obsessed with the idea of the perfect crime. His neighbor, a brilliant young man, Nathan Leopold, the two boys seemed an odd match. Dickie Loeb, Richard, charmed everyone with his good looks and cool manner. That's Billy. Awkward-looking Nathan Leopold tended to hide in his friend's shadow. That's Stu, because Shaggy's a little goofy looking, kind of like the beta, kind of like willing to do whatever Billy says. Nathan was in love with Richard and would do anything he wanted for sexual favors. He later wrote, Loeb's friendship was necessary to me, terribly necessary. His motive for the murder, he said, was to please Dick. I mean, I assume no pun intended. Inspired by this odd mix of nihilistic philosophy, detective fiction, and misguided love, Leopold and Loeb hatched a plan to commit the quote-unquote perfect crime. It was not so much the idea of a murder that attracted them, but the idea of getting away with murder. On May 21st, 1924, Leopold and Loeb lured a young neighbor boy, 14-year-old Bobby Frank, into their car. They killed him with a chisel and stuffed his body in a culvert. The next morning, the Frank family received a special delivery letter, a ransom note demanding $10,000 in unmarked bills for the return of the boy. Before Mr. Frank could pay the ransom, police discovered the child's body. There was nothing linking the criminals to the crime except for a single pair of glasses. Police traced the glasses to a Chicago optometrist who had prescribed them for Nathan Leopold. If he hadn't lost his glasses, Leopold and his friend Loeb might have indeed gotten away with murder. So reading that, this really does, and with the screenwriter confirming it, it really kind of like brings a whole new perspective of why these two guys did it, why they teamed up. And it does kind of seem like a weird, toxic relationship. And that really kind of shines through in that stabbing scene, because it seems like they are partners in crime and like superficial physical partners, kind of living out this fantasy that they may be afraid to showcase in 1996 America. And when they're stabbing each other, like at this point, I was like, oh, they're like codependent. They like need each other to commit these crimes, but it's super unhealthy. And it's really shining in this, like, you're stabbing me too hard scene. I thought that was super interesting. A whole nother perspective to the movie now. And it's not a theory. It was a theory back then, but the screenwriter confirmed it.
Yeah, I'm going to push back a little bit on it. I think it's a good theory. I could see the parts of it. It was definitely a codependent relationship. It clearly wasn't sexually based because of their certain desires to go after the other, right? Because all Billy wanted to do was have sex with Sydney. That was his conquest. Maybe Stu was attracted.
That was on screen.
That's all we have. All we have is what's on screen.
No, I agree. Billy was more like on target. Like, I want to kill Sydney because her mom ruined my life. And this is a perfect excuse. Going back to what you said, it's like more of an excuse rather than a full-blown motive. It's just like, hey, maybe I've been wired wrong from the start, and this was just like a push off a ledge. Mm-hmm. And Stu is wired the same way, and he's right with me. And he happens to be in love with me. And I can manipulate his decisions.
Yeah, there's definitely an emotional relationship dependency upon it. I'm always a little dubious when the confirmation comes, like
decades later.
Yeah, 32 years later, or 28 years, or 20. I can't do the math. 26 years later, where they're like, "Yeah, that was totally it," and you're like, "Okay, I don't know."
I'm more inclined to believe this one.
Yeah, I could definitely see. I mean, this is kind of like the Bonnie and Clyde thing, right? They were both psychos who found each other and fed off each other, and there was this strong emotional bond because that's the only person who understands you. But in a world of like psychopaths and sociopaths and serial killers, they can't even muster emotion. Like, they don't have that. Like, that's a well documented like psychology of psychopaths and sociopaths. They can't even fathom like an attraction or a relationship or love. So it would makes sense to me that there was no real love there. There was just a codependency of each other who
wanted to carry out these sick and twisted desires.
Yeah, but I probably a level of love there that was just like a caring for each other, but like a romantic love, like psychopaths can't feel that. Whether or not they're being true to that in the movie, I don't know.
I think it's more lust driven and infatuation driven rather than love.
Infatuation's a great word, yeah.
If anything.
Being infatuated with each other, yeah. Every serial killer duo, I'm unashamedly a huge fan of,
murders,
serial killer documentaries, stuff like that. I do. I find it fascinating. And anytime you get a duo, there's just like a sick and twisted level of infatuation with each other.
How many people do you think we can kill without falling in love with each other? Or with, if you'll up our numbers.
0, because it's too late. Or with, whatever's going to make us more efficient. I am in love with you. I don't know.
I'm not infatuated with you. I actually love you, so I cannot kill.
All right, that's fair. We're not going to murder anybody because we're in love with each other.
That's who we are. Well, I thought that was super interesting of a fan theory, and then for the screenwriter to come out and confirm it. Now, like you said, take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah. Looking this up, though, this movie, just because of its popularity and popularity to this day, I mean, there are fan theories upon fan theories for this movie. There are people who have come up with some of the wildest theories.
Because the first thing I Googled after watching this movie was, why did Stu have motive? And then that's like a top result. And so there's so much like Reddit threads. I found these articles. I don't know if they told me exactly why they did all these murders, maybe I wouldn't be that satisfied. But the fact that they give us a little bit of vagueness, it was like a little bit easier to digest.
Yeah.
For me.
And I mean, you're right with like going back to the other serial killer duo, like, for all my time watching Criminal Minds, I know there's always a dominant.
There's a dom and a sub.
In the serial killer world, there's the guy who makes the plan and then the guy who carries it out for the dom. So, all right.
Can you give me a sarcastic selling point for 1996's Squeam?
Yeah, Squeam. So I said, it's a slasher film with maybe teenagers where you never really know who's dead.
I should have went first because that's a little bit of an evolution of mine. I said this is a teen slasher movie that will literally set the bar for teen slasher movies.
Well, we're on the same page there.
Final review. Fight!
All right, let's check in on what the other guys are saying. We're going to start out with Rotten Tomatoes. The critics are giving this a 76%. So we got a good 3/4 of critics saying this was a fun, good time movie.
That's fresh.
The fans are bumping it up even more to an 82%. They loved it.
We're a little more extreme on both ends of the spectrum here on Metacritic. Our critic review there is a 65.
Come on.
Yeah, the people give it an 8.5. So...
And now for our spooky wild card, a score that is certain to kill from IMDb 7.4. All right, we nailed it. So we have our scores from the other guys. Let's talk about what we think. Nick, can you read me your laughable log line, followed by some popcorn points?
When a killer shows up to a bunch of high schoolers who have been held back for one too many years, we have to find out who this murderous son of a bitch is before he kills more high schoolers / adults. I'm in line with IMDb, friend, 7.4. I thought this was fun, man. I thought it was. We talked about the self-aware nature. I thought it was enjoyable. Good old-fashioned whodunit threw me for a couple of loops. The cast did well, or as well as they could have. The acting was 90s camp acting. Would have been a little higher. The ending scene just kind of drew out who's dead, who's not. I was like, oh, okay, wrap it up, guys. Wrap it up. But all in all, pretty enjoyable movie. Good job, Wes Craven. I'm not a big horror guy in general. Not like this is comparable to modern day horror, gore kind of movies. But as like a fun slasher from the 90s, like this is definitely a staple that everyone should have seen at least once.
My laughable log line for Scream is Ghostface Killer, not the guy from Wu-Tang Clan, murders teens, one faculty member, and any adult that will get in the way of his small-town gruesome homicidal tirade, one pop culture reference at a time. This gets a 7.9. I really enjoyed this movie. For the time. Really set the bar for slasher movies. Gave it a new twist. shout out Shyamalan, of kind of being a little bit self-aware, a little bit more meta. We discussed this. We like this. It makes the movie more enjoyable. It kind of gives an audience like a sigh of relief break when they go into these comedic breaks without being too overly winky at the audience. Like I talked about with Signs, I think with mystery and suspense movies, it's super easy to get a high score with me, building up that mystery and suspense. And it really is about sticking the landing. So when the big reveal happens, you're just like either kind of let down or your mind is blown. Like for this one, when it was revealed that it was Billy, I was like, oh, come on. He's way too obvious. Really? It was Billy and Stu? But with all great movies, the more you sit on it and think about it days later, you're like, why was Stu so motivated to kill Casey? Why did he do this? Oh, like this crazy theory I found online. This kind of brings a whole new dynamic to it. Like I said, I do appreciate the giving the audience a little bit of reason behind the motive, but ultimately leaving it vague. Maybe there's no motive, but without leaving them in complete darkness. It kind of raised my rating. And honestly, like after sitting on it, I'm satisfied with the ending. I liked it. This was a good time. Doesn't quite get that 8 status from me. That's like a really great movie. But 7.9, that's nothing to scoff at. This is microwave popcorn. This is good and buttery, homemade from the microwave via West Crave from Just Play It.
This is also the highest cumulative score of season 2 so far.
No way.
Yeah, this is, and we both agree.
We finally, I was gonna say we finally broke 7, but Batman is above 7.
No, I agree with you. The ending didn't quite stick. It was a little drawn out.
I think your qualms with the ending are a little bit more nitpicky in line, which doesn't have a lot of weight in the ratings. I believe nitpicks should have, but I
think it goes with not sticking the landing. I feel like it was kind of a messy landing of like the end.
And again, it's so hard to pull off a perfect landing with
hard
mystery movies, suspense, like whodunit movies. It's so hard.
I think if Gail was going to kill Billy at the end, he should have just killed him in the kitchen, and I would have been satisfied with that ending too. Reveal the killers, show them to be psycho stabbing each other, and then Gail comes back, kills him. That's here nor there. Still a good movie. But my question for you is something that makes this movie fun that you were talking about after you watched the movie is getting all these different perspectives and fan theories. Do you think if every movie, including every bad movie we've watched, had a loyal following with a bunch of fan theories, do you think it would up the rating? Like if you got all these different perspectives? Because I agree with you. I like that there's a bunch of fan theories where I'm like, oh, I didn't think of that.
So this feels like a trap because whenever I bring up these theories and going back to the Wraith, I mean, that was pretty much like me trying to explain why things happened in that movie when they left us with 0 clues. So I think to a certain extent, a movie does need to leave breadcrumbs and need to leave certain clues so that it is something that the fans can chew on and study and question years, decades later. But at the same time, you don't want to be a Luc Besson and leave things, quote unquote, up to interpretation.
Luc Besson.
Because at some point, it's lazy writing. You're just like, make up your own reason and be satisfied with it. And then on the other side, it's well-balanced writing. And I think this movie falls more on the well-balanced. But I think like you got to give the audience a little bit of details and specificity. Don't leave us completely out in the dark. How much self-respect does the story integrity have, the plot, to justify and allow fans to have theories? Because you can talk about Pluto Nash and be like, oh, well, actually, there's a fan theory about why this was so shitty, and like it's actually not. It's like, no, that was just a bad movie.
Yeah.
But like with movies that kind of leave it a little bit vague, or like a little bit of what's your interpretation of this movie, like Scream or Signs. So it's wild to go into a movie theater, watch a movie for 95 minutes, walk away and say, that was all right, or that was really good. And then there's a whole nother level when you get into like the post movie talk with the fans on online forums. It really does kind of drive it up. To answer your question, it depends on how much self-respect and due diligence the writers did to set the groundwork to justify and give permission for the fans to make up these theories. If they do a good job drawing it out where it deserves those fan theories, then it definitely ups the ante. If they're lazy and a pervert like Luc Besson, then no.
Fucking Luc Besson. I agree with you. I guess the short answer is if you're a good enough movie where people want to think about it and come up with fan theories.
If you deserve the benefit of the doubt, then we'll give it to you. If you don't deserve it, off.
Again, there's a reason bad movies don't have fan theories, is because people watched it and said, I don't want to think about this anymore.
Okay. Well, that was Scream. We are in spooky season, SZN.
We got one more.
You should join us next week as we don't watch a person. We don't watch a place. But we're going to watch something.
There's some things that just can't be described.
Tee. Please follow us on Instagram and YouTube at Just Play It Podcast. Please follow us on Twitter at Just Play It Pod. We're heading gone. It's time to get out of here. My heart's racing. I got to go to bed and watch a stand-up comedy because I'm scared. And this is spooky season.
I need ha-has.
Remember, if there's Ghostface Killer killing teens in them streets, you better skeet on out of there and go yeet.
I'm your worst nightmare.
Go into Spirit Halloween, find all the wigs, and split them.
We're not going to murder anybody because we're in love with each other.